Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Niki Abdoli, and I'm here on site at the IRHSDC located at the University of British Columbia, live reporting. An estimated 150,000 First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children attended residential schools, detaching them from their families, communities, and language. These schools were a component of a systematic and multi-layer effort to address the Indian problem, designed to assimilate the indigenous population and eliminate Aboriginal governments. Harsh discipline along with neglect and abuse were a common theme in all of these schools. These residential schools were poorly kept and resulted in higher death rates and the spread of disease, reported in as early as 1907. In 2006, survivor groups initiated class action suits, which resulted in the federal government and religious organizations to address decades of silence and denial. A Truth and Reconciliation Commission was created to investigate and address Canada's Indian residential school history. The commission traveled across the country to hear and collect survivor stories. These stories, along with other forms of records, are housed here at the IRSHDC. The Indian Residential School History and Dialogue Center, located on the traditional ancestral unceded territory of the Holcomb Mallam-speaking Musqueam people. The IRSHDC provides access to former Indian residential school students, their family, and communities to records of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The purpose of the IRSHDC is to engage community-based experts, researchers, and educators to discuss and explore the ongoing impact of residential schools and their intricate relation to economic development, health, and sustainability of indigenous communities. The IRSHDC intends to grow their collection of government and church records and stories through public engagement, ongoing work, and collaboration with experts and educators. The IRSHDC houses a vast collection of digital copies as well as original records of survivor stories, records, information, and conversation about residential schools from donors and institutional partners. The collections draw from records held at the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation, Libraries and Archives Canada. However, the majority of the collection is digital for easy access. The University of British Columbia established the IRSHDC to create a space to raise awareness of the circumstances that have shaped the Indigenous experience in Canada. The centre serves to acknowledge the relationship between Indigenous and Canadian relations. The IRSHDC aims to contribute in the works of both research and application to provide innovation and leadership by providing a platform that can support research that leads to new ways of accessing and arranging information and records. The Center hopes to preserve the history and legacy of the schools and contribute to the works of decentering colonial systems of knowledge organizations. The IRSHDC also serves to remind the non-Indigenous public of the disrespect and denial the Indigenous community faced in the wake of a colonial history. The central component of education is trust and must be present for any learning to take place. Therefore, the existence of IRSHDC serves to not only showcase the Indigenous experience but to also highlight on the importance of social movements in the Aboriginal adult education. The IRSHDC's website also includes photographs and written records of all residential schools in British Columbia and other Canadian provinces. One of BC's most notable residential schools is the ADHE Residential School, which was in operation from 1904 to 1940, located on Flores Island on the western side of Vancouver Island. The school was taken over by the United Church in 1925, and the staff notoriously banned the Indigenous children from speaking their tongue language and noted that the children never learned to work without punishment. IRHSDC's website under the Explore section also includes survivor stories from Indian residential school children from BC. These stories were gathered from various communities across Canada between 2004 and 2008. This collection of recorded stories, along with the photographs of residential schools, are available to the public at the IRHSDC to explore, hoping to reserve their legacy and have their voices heard. IRHSDC is a crucial component for gapping the bridge between Indigenous relations and Canada, a place where history will live to serve generations and to prevent erasure and repetition. Thank you very much. This was Niki Abdoli, and I hope you enjoyed this report.